Welcome to Life Stories, where one woman walked into a $1 billion empire and was told she didn't belong simply because of the color of her skin. By the end of that day, the entire empire had collapsed. This isn't just a story about racism or power or betrayal. It's about the quiet strength behind silence and the fire that follows when someone decides enough is enough. What happens when the people you underestimate the most hold the power to end everything you've built? Stay with us, because the moment that changed everything started with 5 words: deliveries go around the back. And from that moment, nothing would ever be the same. Let's begin. The morning Haven Rose Industries began to unravel didn't arrive with thunder or fire. It came quietly, disguised as routine. The polished marble lobby gleamed under the golden Manhattan sun, a reflection of the empire's pride, precision, and exclusivity. Employees passed through the glass doors with security badges, espresso cups, and ambition in their eyes. No one expected that the most consequential guest that day would walk in alone, unannounced, and unrecognized. Jayla Morgan, founder and CEO of Morgan Dynamics, one of the most influential figures in Silicon Valley, stepped into the lobby wearing a charcoal gray cashmere coat, no branding, no escort. Her presence was composed but commanding. To the untrained eye, she might have seemed like an ordinary woman. But the subtle confidence in her stride and the elegance of her understated style betrayed the truth. This was power wrapped in restraint. Cassidy Blake, the blonde receptionist stationed at the center desk, barely looked up from her phone. When she finally did, her eyes flicked over Jayla's brown skin, her minimal makeup, her quiet presence. Cassidy gave a small, dismissive smirk. "Deliveries go around the back," she said flatly, nodding toward the side entrance. Jayla blinked once, slowly. "I'm here to see Thomas Whitaker. I have a 9 a.m. meeting." Cassidy didn't check the system. She simply raised an eyebrow. "I think you're mistaken. That's the CEO's calendar. You must have the wrong building." Jayla opened her mouth to speak, but Cassidy waved her off and muttered just loud enough. "Some people really think they can just walk in here." Then came the final insult. Cassidy reached forward and grabbed the sleeve of Jayla's coat, as if to guide her away. The feel of that touch, a stranger's entitlement pressed against luxury, tightened something cold inside Jayla's chest. Her voice was low, precise. "Remove your hand from me." Security descended in seconds. Jayla didn't resist as 2 guards flanked her, their hands far less polite than Cassidy's. From the mezzanine, Olivia Bennett watched it all unfold, paralyzed. A rising manager, one of the very few Black women in Haven Rose's leadership, Olivia felt her stomach twist into shame as she failed once again to speak up. From the executive elevator, Vice President Noah Chandler stepped out, saw Jayla's face, and froze. Just for a second. He recognized her instantly. Every executive in the city knew her, but then his mouth curved into a sly smile, and he did nothing. Outside, as Jayla stood on the sidewalk, the humiliation still fresh but invisible on her composed face, she looked back at the towering building behind her. Her fingers slipped into her coat pocket and pressed a button on her phone. "Cancel the deal," she said. Immediately. What none of them knew, Cassidy, Noah, Thomas, or Olivia, was that Jayla hadn't come to that meeting merely to sign contracts. She had already suspected the rot. Haven Rose was drowning in polished racism and polished spreadsheets. The meeting was her test, to see how they treated a stranger, to see how they treated a Black woman when they didn't know who she was. But someone else did know. Noah Chandler had known, and he had let it happen. Hours later, chaos began rippling across the markets. Whispers, questions, then headlines. Morgan Dynamics abruptly withdrew from all negotiations with Haven Rose Industries. The strategic alliance that was supposed to save the company was gone. In his corner office, CEO Thomas Whitaker stared at his vibrating phone as notifications poured in. Investors, reporters, damage control. Down in the lobby, Cassidy's smug laughter echoed. She had no idea what she had just done. Later that day, Noah approached her desk with a lazy grin. "What happened this morning?" Cassidy shrugged. "Some woman pretending to have a meeting with Mr. Whitaker. I took care of it." He nodded, gently patted her shoulder. Good instincts. But behind that calm facade, Noah's thoughts were a storm of calculation. He had wanted the Morgan deal dead. He had known it would empower Whitaker and threaten his own shot at the top job. What he hadn't expected was how fast it would unravel. He'd lit a fire, but now it was spreading faster than he could control. By the time security footage surfaced online, it was too late. Jayla Morgan's silent test had become a public reckoning. The video showed Cassidy's smirk, the guard's hands, Jayla's steady composure. It went viral. In the shadows of Haven Rose, Olivia Bennett watched her colleagues panic, and for the first time, she saw fear on Noah's face. What would you do if you were Olivia? Speak out against the company that pays your bills, or stay silent to survive another day. Could you walk past injustice when the cost of integrity is your entire career? But as the sun set over New York and Haven Rose began to crumble, a new force had already been set in motion, and Jayla Morgan had only just begun. Olivia Bennett sat in her office at Haven Rose Industries with the blinds half drawn, her eyes fixed on the glass reflection of the city skyline, but seeing nothing at all. The viral footage played over and over in her mind. Jayla Morgan, pushed and escorted out like a trespasser. Cassidy's mocking sneer. Noah Chandler's cold indifference. And herself, standing frozen above it all, watching like a coward. Her hands trembled slightly as they rested on the armrests of her chair. The same chair where, for the last 3 years, she had worked harder, stayed later, and smiled more diplomatically than anyone else on her floor, always careful not to be too assertive, too angry, too black. She had convinced herself that quiet excellence was the answer, that if she just played by the rules long enough, someone at the top would notice her value. But that lie had finally cracked. Now the company was spinning. Major partners were calling in demands. Shareholders were panicking, and Olivia, once invisible, had suddenly become relevant, not because of her talents, but because she had been there. A PR rep asked if she'd be willing to issue a supportive statement, something light, maybe just a tweet. As the most visible black manager at Haven Rose, the rep said with an awkward smile, "Your voice would mean a lot right now." Olivia had nearly laughed. A voice? Now they wanted her voice? That same morning, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She hesitated, heart thudding. When she picked up, the voice on the other end was quiet but unmistakably firm. "This is Jayla Morgan." Olivia's throat went dry. "Miss Morgan, I saw what happened. I'm so sorry." Jayla's voice cut through, not unkind, but focused. "I know who you are, Olivia, and I know you didn't intervene, but I also know you recognized me." Olivia closed her eyes. The shame hit like a wave. "I froze. I should have said something. I wanted to. I didn't know what to do." There was a pause. "I understand," Jayla said, her voice softening. "That feeling is familiar. But silence protects the wrong people, Olivia. You know that." The line went dead before Olivia could respond. Later that day, as Olivia stood outside the building, her coat pulled tight against the late autumn wind, she caught a glimpse of Cassidy being ushered out by security. Her face was blotchy, her hands clutching a cardboard box with trembling fingers. The woman who had once dismissed Jayla now looked like a hollowed-out version of herself. But Olivia didn't feel satisfaction, only a strange, hollow ache. This wasn't justice, it was consequence. And justice, Olivia thought, should go deeper. Inside the top-floor boardroom, Thomas Whitaker was losing control. His voice cracked as he demanded answers, barking questions at his senior staff. Why hadn't anyone verified the appointment? Why was Morgan Dynamics pulling out without warning? No one answered. Noah Chandler sat silently in his seat, arms crossed, playing the role of calm strategist. But beneath the polished expression, panic was beginning to fester. The fire he had lit to undermine Whitaker was growing too fast, too wild. The goal had never been total collapse, just enough chaos to weaken the old man's grip so Noah could take the throne. But now the foundation of Haven Rose was crumbling, and Jayla's quiet retaliation had opened wounds that bled far beyond the lobby. That night, Jayla sat alone in the penthouse suite of a hotel overlooking Central Park. A single lamp glowed beside her, casting soft light over the files spread across her table. Her assistant had already prepared the documents: public termination of the partnership, formal statement to the press, legal review of the footage. But Jayla wasn't looking at any of it. Her eyes were fixed on a photograph tucked inside a manila folder, a photo of a younger Olivia Bennett speaking at a community tech conference in Detroit. The caption below read, "Rising Voice in AI Security." Jayla remembered reading about her years ago, before either of them had made it to the ivory towers. Now, both of them stood on the edges of different decisions. One had just pulled the trigger, the other was still deciding whether to find her voice. Suddenly, Jayla's tablet vibrated. An email. Subject urgent, internal leak. Her eyes scanned quickly. Attached were screenshots of emails between Noah Chandler and James Harper, CEO of Evercore Technologies, Havenrose's chief competitor. The betrayal was now in writing. Dates, files, deals made in whispers and traded for power. Jayla's breath caught for a moment, so that's why Noah hadn't stopped it. He had let her be humiliated, let Cassidy crash the deal, all to destroy his own CEO and hand Havenrose's secrets to a rival. Her retaliation had merely cleared the way for his treason. Jayla leaned back, a strange calm filling her lungs. She had come to expose a cultural sickness, but what she had uncovered was a terminal cancer of greed. Would you expose someone knowing it could destroy an entire company, but also save everyone else from their corruption? As Jayla prepared her next move, she didn't know that Olivia Bennett was already walking toward her own turning point, and neither woman would be the same after what came next. The boardroom at Havenrose Industries was silent when the final blow landed. Olivia Bennett stood at the far end of the long mahogany table, her voice steady but trembling at its edges, as she finished reading aloud the internal emails between Noah Chandler and James Harper. Across the room, Noah's expression didn't falter. Not yet, but something in his eyes shifted, something uncertain, almost human. His carefully engineered rise had collapsed in seconds, not because of Jayla Morgan, not because of Olivia, but because arrogance had made him believe no one would ever have the courage to speak. The room had grown darker, though the lights remained on. Something in the air, fear, or maybe shame, cast a shadow over every person sitting in a seat of power. Thomas Whitaker sat slumped, not in anger, but in resignation. He knew now how long the decay had gone unnoticed beneath the surface. And worse, how complicit he'd been in letting it fester. He had seen the signs. He had heard the whispers. But comfort made cowards of men, and cowardice had cost him everything. When Olivia finished, she placed the tablet gently on the table. "I'm resigning effective immediately," she said, "but I won't be quiet anymore." Her voice was low, but it struck like thunder. Jayla watched all of this unfold from a discreet live stream her legal team had arranged. She hadn't stepped foot in Havenrose since the incident, nor would she. Some doors didn't deserve to be opened twice. But as Olivia closed hers, Jayla felt a pulse of something she hadn't allowed herself to feel since that morning in the lobby. Hope. Days passed, then weeks. The fallout was catastrophic. Noah Chandler was arrested under federal charges for corporate espionage. The news made front pages nationwide. Havenrose stock tanked to pennies. Clients left. Partners vanished. The company once worth billions declared bankruptcy in under 90 days. Cassidy Blake tried to sue for wrongful termination, but the lawsuit was laughed out of court. She moved back to her hometown in Michigan, changed her name, and stopped speaking to journalists. Thomas Whitaker gave one final interview, gray, sunken, and undone. "We built something beautiful," he said, "but we forgot to make it good." Meanwhile, Olivia Bennett disappeared from the spotlight. She rejected all job offers, turned down television interviews, refused book deals. For a time, it seemed she had walked away from everything. But Jayla had other plans. A month later, Olivia received a handwritten note. Thick, cream-colored paper. No logo. Just 6 words, "Let's build something that heals." It was signed, Jayla. That spring, the old Havenrose Tower was reborn. Its glass panels were scrubbed of logos. The lobby repainted in warm neutrals. The building was renamed the Morgan Center for Equity and Innovation, and its mission was as radical as it was simple: to give power back to those who had been denied it. The center funded minority-led tech startups, mentored underrepresented talent, and held every executive accountable for ethics, not just earnings. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Jayla stood beside Olivia, their shoulders squared to the crowd. No dramatic speeches. No theatrical revenge. Only a quiet commitment. We don't want to destroy what came before, Olivia told the press afterward. We want to make sure it never happens again. Months passed. The center bloomed. Jayla took a step back from public life, focusing on strategy and philanthropy. Olivia became its beating heart. Her leadership wasn't perfect. There were challenges, critics, compromises. But her clarity and integrity turned the center into a model studied across industries. One evening, after a long mentoring session with young developers from underserved neighborhoods, Olivia returned to her office and found an old package on her desk. No return address. Inside, a dusty, framed photo. It was from years ago, her standing alone at that Detroit conference, smiling nervously beside her makeshift booth. And taped to the glass, a post-it note in Jayla's handwriting. Even back then, I saw it. Tears welled in Olivia's eyes. Not from sadness, but from something gentler. Recognition. She had spent so much of her life asking the world to see her. And now, it finally had. Elsewhere, Jayla Morgan sat on the balcony of her quiet Lake Tahoe home, the sky above her lavender and gold. She scrolled through news articles on her tablet, some about the Morgan Center's latest scholarship program, some about Haven Rose's final liquidation, some about a young intern from the Bronx who had just secured funding for a mental health AI startup through the center's accelerator. Jayla set the tablet aside and closed her eyes. This wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. In another part of the country, Cassidy Blake spent her nights answering customer complaints at a call center, her name now a curse in hiring circles. Her arrogance had vanished, replaced by numb repetition. She had applied for dozens of jobs. None called back. Only one letter ever arrived, an invitation to complete 1,000 hours of community service as a settlement for Jayla's lawsuit. Cassidy had accepted, at first, reluctantly. But over time, she began to listen to the people she served, to hear stories that shattered the brittle image she once had of herself. Her penance would never be enough, but for the first time, she had stopped making excuses. And somewhere in a quiet Colorado town, Thomas Whitaker sat on a porch in a chair that creaked with age. He read about the Morgan Center in the paper. He saw Olivia's name, saw the building he had once ruled now shining with a different purpose. He closed the paper and stared out at the mountains. They made it better, he whispered. Jayla never returned to Haven Rose. She never needed to. Some victories don't require an audience. They are felt in the silent transformation of spaces, in the elevation of voices once drowned, in the warmth of a name spoken with respect instead of suspicion. Her legacy wasn't a tower or a headline. It was the quiet revolution she had set in motion by simply walking away that day, calm, poised, and unforgiving of ignorance. What did this story mean to you personally? Share your reflections in the comments. Type 100 if this story moved you. Where are you watching from? Share this story with someone who believes in justice, and thank you for watching Life Stories.